School can be hard. Having barriers in your education can be even harder. How do we get through that? Let's talk.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. I'm your host, Latara, and today we have a special episode for you. We're going to discuss a significant transition that many students face: moving from high school to college, particularly for those who are neurodivergent. Joining me is Tony, the Access and Transition Support Officer at Mohawk College's Accessible Learning Services. Hi, Tony.
Hey Latara, I'm excited to be here and talk about how we can support students during this important transition.
Good. Okay, awesome. So life is just one huge transition, right?
Yes.
They are so challenging, especially moving from high school to college. So today we're going to talk about how to navigate this transition, especially when it comes to accommodations.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Okay, so when students come to college, it's different from high school. How come?
When students are going into high school, they're usually going from their elementary school. They're going into a high school within the same board. Even if they go from public to Catholic, their IEPs and their whole file will go with them. So from the start of kindergarten up until grade 12, that file follows the student. Doesn't matter how many times they switch schools, if they switch between Catholic, the public board throughout that time, their file will still come with them. When they finish grade 12 and they leave their high school, their file no longer goes with them into their next adventure post-secondary.
Okay. So like coming from high school to college, you have to kind of bring your own stuff with you and then also be able to ask for these supports yourself, like self-advocacy.
Yes. So one of the tips that we like to tell our students who are either grade 11 or 12 looking to make that next step into post-secondary is to ensure that you get a copy of all of your documentation. Whether you've had any assessments completed, any IEPs that you had, especially your most recent, if you can have a paper copy or even ask for it to be sent to your email so that you do have an electronic copy of it, is really great, just because that'll be a great starting point for when you meet with an accessibility counselor and you register for services. Advocacy is also a skill that you'll continue to learn while you're in post-secondary, and is something that you'll find becomes more the student's responsibility and less of the staff, guidance counselors, and support systems.
Yeah. And like it's very crucial when you come to college or post-secondary to understand your rights and responsibilities as a student and as a student with disabilities especially. And a transition plan can help with this. Because schools are required to provide supports for students with disabilities, and that's where Tony comes in.
Absolutely. We provide various supports for our students. Our most common supports that students tend to come to our office for are extra time for tests, note-taking assistance, and access to audiobooks or alternative formats for their books for those students that maybe have difficulties reading, as well as assistive technologies.
Awesome. So that's great to know. We do have some questions here. So another common question is, does the college know that I need support after I accept my offer? And we kind of went through that.
So absolutely not. The college does not automatically know. We get no information from your application for when you filled it out to apply for the colleges that you applied for, nor from the school that you're coming from. It's really up to the student to reach out to Accessible Learning Services and to set up their accommodations.
And then also, can you explain what an IEP is?
For sure. That's a great question. Your IEP is your individualized education plan. So if you were in elementary school and high school, maybe you weren't working at the exact grade level that the rest of your peers were, or maybe you received additional supports for certain subjects such as your English or your math, where you might have been able to have open book or extra time. These things would have been implemented into what they call an IEP, which is your individualized plan.
Okay.
And it'll be very similar at the college level, with the exception that we would call it an accommodation letter.
Okay. So what if, like, do you have to provide your IEP? And what if a student doesn't have a copy of their IEP?
You don't have to supply a copy of your IEP. Obviously, we think it's great if you do have it. However, we do have a student transition officer, as well as our ACs and our accessible support officers, who will be able to reach out on your behalf to your previous school to ask for a copy of that. We would CC you into the email because most often the school will contact the student directly to ensure that permission is being given for them to email a copy, and they usually will email it to the student for the student to be able to give to our services.
Perfect. So you guys do all of the heavy lifting, if need be.
Yeah, we definitely don't want no documentation to hinder students or stop students from registering for our services. So in the meantime, while waiting for documentation, we will try to put things into place, whether it's supports or strategies to support the student while we wait for additional information.
Okay. And you don't specifically need an IEP, because if you don't have one, let's say you've been recently diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or a disability, can you still be supported as a student?
For sure. Absolutely great question. You can definitely be supported. Many students don't receive IEPs in school. There's enough supports built into high school and elementary school where some students just sort of get by. They might realize that there's something, but they don't really know. Other students, it does happen later in life where they get those diagnoses, or they've experienced something that has impacted their ability to learn. So you don't need an IEP. We have an accommodation documentation form right on our website that a student can download and take with them or send to any healthcare practitioner, whether that's a family physician, a surgeon that you might have seen, whether it is an occupational therapist that you might have, a therapist, a psychologist, somebody that might be able to provide some additional information onto what the student is experiencing and how it does impact their ability to learn while here at college.
Okay.
As well as we take medical notes from doctors who have let us know that some students are prescribed certain medications, whether it's for anxiety, ADHD, other chronic health conditions that they might experience.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. And what about, like, the information that a counselor wants to know? Because all this documentation is to kind of come up with a plan when you meet your counselor. What kind of information do counselors want to know from you?
So they want to know really what your strengths are, what your areas of weaknesses are, maybe what you've already implemented and you found to be helpful for you, different strategies that you've utilized in the past. If you have any assistive tech, if you prefer to do speech to text or text to speech, if you often do audiobooks because you find it easier than reading, any sort of information that could provide them with a better understanding of the impacts that what you're experiencing have on you and have on your learning, as well as maybe any upcoming appointments that you have, or if you have surgeries coming up or you've recently had them, that could affect maybe your attendance or your ability to attend classes.
Okay, good. And sorry, what was that documentation piece that you just spoke about?
We have an accommodation documentation form, It's the ADF, and it's on the ALS website, on the Mohawk College web page. If you just type in ALS, you'll come to our page, and it's right there. And you can, students can print it off, or they can email the electronic version of that link to the registered health practitioner of their choice.
And we will put that link to that document right in the description below.
That'd be great.
Yeah. So when you talk about accommodations, what are they and what are some examples?
Oh, okay, great. So oftentimes accommodations, what they look like is there's some that are specifically more classroom based and some that are testing based. So accommodations for the classroom could be ergonomic furniture if you've recently had an accident or you have an injury, chronic pain, so you might need a sit-stand desk, an ergonomic chair. It can look like extension for assignments. It can be receiving any slides or PowerPoints in advance, so advanced material, so that you have the ability to review before going into the lecture. It can be may miss classes or need for travel time in between classes, if maybe anxiety is something that is concerning of the student, and at those busy transition times the halls are just overwhelming for students, so they need to wait a few minutes so that they feel more comfortable in the halls, or if they have an injury which prevents their ability to get to and from certain classes within specific times. And then for testing, we offer extended time for tests. If you're using any assistive technology such as Dragon, Kurzweil, VoiceOver, those can be utilized for testing. Some students prefer to have testing done on computer or laptop instead of paper copies, so that can be an accommodation. We accommodate different reading and writing scribes in the testing. And then for both testing and classroom, we have a variety of assistive technologies that are available to students. We have a huge lending library, so we do a lot of laptop loans, which will have all the software that the students are required and need. We do note taking, so they'll meet with one of our assistive technologist learning strategists to review the different softwares that are available to them and find the one that best fits them, as well as a variety of other softwares that we offer, such as the voice to text and text to speech.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of support that a lot of people could use.
Yeah, definitely there is a lot. It's all individualized. So when you meet with that counselor, that's why it's really good to be able to provide as much information as possible, because it'll really allow that counselor to be able to put the best supports in place for you.
Yeah, and accommodations for people with disabilities are just going to be able to sort of equal out that playing field. Like if you're not processing information in the same way you would reading versus taking in that audio format of the textbook, that's going to put you on an equal playing field with the people who are processing information and had the textbook and are able to read.
Exactly. And that is our whole platform as a service, is to ensure that every student have an equal opportunity to be successful in the program that they picked.
Amazing. So what about students who are like nervous to take advantage of these services because they think that it's going to show up on their diploma, or that their workplace is going to know that they've accessible learning services and have had accommodations at college?
Perfect. Absolutely not. Your diploma will not indicate that you have a disability or that you accessed any of the supports or services through accessible learning services, nor will any transcripts. So if you do choose to continue your education at a different school, or you continue on into a university program, the transcript does not show that you used our services. And employers do not need to know that you utilized our services. We service many apprentice students as well, and their employers are not notified that they utilized ALS while here at college.
That's great because confidentiality and disclosure of personal information, especially in disability, is a very personal choice in whether you want to disclose it or not.
Yes, your privacy is very much protected. We take our confidentiality as a top priority here at Mohawk College, including to the point where if a student wants their parents to be able to speak with anybody from our department without the student present, then consent forms are filled out by the student and signed so that we have that on file to say that we can speak to family members or the support system for that specific student. We really want to ensure that the student's privacy is protected by all costs.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love that. And what if a student is accessing financial supports like OSAP? How will their disability affect that?
So disabilities can affect OSAP in terms of eligibility for additional funding. It's important to disclose your needs to ensure that you get the supports that you're entitled to. Our students have a right to apply for the BSWD funding, which is for students who have applied to OSAP as a student with a disability. So it's a great resource for students who might need some extra resources while here at college.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing this with me, Tony. It's clear that there are so many resources available to help students smoothly transition from that high school to college.
Thanks, Latara. Remember, students, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Let's Talk. Don't forget to reach out to Accessible Learning Services if you need any help. Keep learning and stay curious.